Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Mahesh Iyer. I have been cycling for the last 15 years. I've been doing it competitively for the last 10 years, which means that I've been participating in races at various locations in India, across India. I've also done a few events and races outside of India. Had a fair bit of success. I started with the intent of sort of improving my fitness and then fell in love with cycling. And yeah, I've been at it now for a while. I've clocked about 1,15,000 kilometers in the last 10 years. And yeah, I truly enjoy it. I'm also part of a local racing team called Pune Wolfpack. Now coming to today's session, I'll talk a little bit about how we are going to structure it. We'll divide it into three parts. In the first part, we'll talk about the absolute basics of bicycling, right? How does one get initiated into cycling? What are the things that how do you get started basically? So we'll talk about the absolute fundamentals of cycling. That's what I plan to cover in the first part. In the second part, I will be covering bike maintenance. I'll talk about bike maintenance. It's super important to ensure that you are maintaining the bike from a safety standpoint, because it's there are mechanical parts, they're subject to wear and tear. So maintaining your bike to enhance their life is super important. So we'll cover that aspect in the middle part or the second part of this entire session. Final part, we'll talk about the safety aspect. What are the things that you need to watch out for when you're riding, be it in the city or out in the highway. Also when you're riding solo or in a group, because when you're riding in a group, the dynamics change. You not only have to take care about your own safety, but you also need to watch out for your fellow riders. All right, so we'll talk about the absolute basics of cycling. I'll do a quick introduction. I'll start with the different types of bicycles to get started. So essentially you have three types of bicycles. What we are looking at here right now is called an MTB, or it's a mountain terrain bike. An MTB is, the frame size is generally short or small, and they're characterized by these fat tires. They're meant for off-roading. You could obviously also use it on regular tar roads, there's no issue. But that's what an MTB is for, basically for off-roading. Then you have something called as a road bike. They are characterized by very thin tires in comparison to a mountain terrain bike. And they're meant for speed. The tires are thin because they can then cut through the air. The overall design of a road bike is also very aerodynamic. So it's basically meant for speed. It's meant for racing, especially on the road. And then you have something called as a hybrid, which has characteristics, borrowed characteristics from both a mountain terrain bike as well as a road bike. They sit somewhere in between. So yeah, that's a little bit about the different types of bikes you have. Okay, so the first thing that you talk about when you're talking about cycling is the size, right? So here we have a mountain terrain bike. Usually, you have the regular sort of small, medium, large sizes. So how do you end up choosing one? Bike manufacturers typically would have a sizing chart, and they would say like if you are a certain height, if you're say let's say between 5 and 5'4", then you would need a small size frame. But they would also say if you're between 5'3" and 5'8", then you can also go for a medium. So someone who's 5'4", the general rule of thumb is go for a smaller size. If you sit in that overlapped window, right? If you're 5'4", then do you choose a small or do you choose a medium? It's better to choose a small in that case, because you can make a smaller frame bigger, but not the other way around. So what do I mean by that? So if let's say you choose a smaller and you feel that you need a little more room, then you can go for a longer stem, or you can increase the saddle height and things like that. But essentially it's very important in getting the size right when you're choosing a bicycle. So make sure that you go through the sizing chart provided by the manufacturer and end up choosing the right size. So once you have sort of selected the right size, you then need to do a basic setup, right? And what do I mean by that? Setting your saddle height. So a general rule of thumb again is that you set it to a height where it's sort of there at least till the hip size, which means that you have enough, when you're pedaling, right, you have enough clearance. So that's the very first thing when it comes to setting up your bike. All right. So once you've set up your saddle height, the next thing is getting on the bike and start riding, right? So how do you pedal? Like what should be your foot position? So typically you would want the ball of your foot to be on the pedal, which means that I guess everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say ball of the foot, right? So essentially uh, okay, let me try and demonstrate. So this is the ball of the foot. So this is the position that you need to, this is the leg position on the pedal. So that is where the force, you're able to generate the force, and that is the part that needs to be in contact with the pedal. Because generally when people start off, they have the tendency to kind of, either use the heel or the middle part of the foot. But that's not the way to pedal. You want the ball of the foot to be in contact with the pedal, because that is where you're able to generate the force, right? So that is the correct foot position when it comes to pedaling. So that's another sort of thing. It takes a while to get used to that, but that is the correct way, and one should be sort of doing that. So setting the saddle height, the foot position, we covered that. All right, the next part that we're going to talk about is the drivetrain. So what do I mean by that? What's a drivetrain when it comes to bicycle? So essentially these are three components. The chain first and foremost, then you have the cassette, the gears in the back, that's also called the cassette, and then you have the chain rings at the front. So in this one there's an MTB, so typically you would have a triple chain ring. So that's the setup over here, and the MTBs generally have a very large sort of cassette size. So this is called the rear derailleur, and this is controlled by the gear shifting mechanism over here. This is the gear shifting mechanism, and this essentially controls the derailleur, which will then help you select the right gears at the back. Okay, and this lever here, the shifter over here, helps you control the front derailleur here, which then helps you select the right chain ring. Okay, so essentially the idea is that you have a wide range of gears to choose from, depending upon the terrain that you're riding, or how hard or how easy you want to ride. Ultimately, the gears that you choose will ultimately end up controlling your cadence. And what do I mean by cadence? Cadence is nothing but RPM, how fast you are moving your legs, revolutions per minute, right? So if you are on the flat terrain, you would want to choose a gear which is maybe somewhere in the middle, okay? And if you're, let's say, climbing, you would need easier gears. So you would then sort of move the chain towards the top of the cassette, the bigger sprockets, the bigger gears. So that's called upshifting. So you would then move up the gears here. How do you select gears? Now that's a very vast sort of topic, but as a general thumb rule, you want to be in, when you're, let's say, it depends on the terrain actually, the selection of gears. So let's say you're sort of going up. If it's an uphill, then you want to be in easier gears. So what I mean by easier gears, basically the bigger or the bigger sprockets over here. That will help, help you keep a healthy cadence. And cadence, what do I mean by cadence? Is basically RPM. So it makes, you're not grinding. If you select a heavier gear, which is basically the smaller sprockets over here, then you are having to grind. There is a lot of torque or force that you need to apply, and that can sort of damage your knee joints and things like that. So you want to make sure that you are in the right gear. If it's an uphill, then you would want to choose one of the bigger sprockets here and sort of use that to climb. And again, if it's a flat terrain, then depending upon your fitness level, the gear selection would be somewhere towards the front of the cassette basically. So one of those smaller sprockets. So gear selection is a very it's a very sort of vast topic, but as a general thumb rule, you want to maintain a cadence or an RPM of around 80 to 90. That's considered a healthy cadence. Now we'll talk a little bit about how you should be on the bike, right? What should be your posture. So again, a general thumb rule is you want to be relaxed. You don't want to be stiff on the bike. You want to be comfortable. And what do I mean by that? You don't want to be like super tensed. You want to drop your shoulders. You also don't want to sort of lock in your elbows. People, when they start off, sometimes they have that habit of doing it. So basically, they would, your hands would be like straight. So you want to have a little bit of an angle, and that's important because your joints can then kind of act like shock absorbers, right? So when you're out on the road, a lot of it's a bumpy road. MTBs do have suspensions, but if you're on a road bikes don't have any suspension. So they just by having this angle, natural angle, they act as kind of a natural suspension, and you ride better when you do that. Now, bike fit is a very sort of it's a very vast topic. It's a science. It's also an art actually. It involves making settings to your bike so that you are actually very comfortable on the bike. I think, like I said, as a general thumb rule, you want to set up your saddle height correctly, and it should sort of be in line with your hip, and just stay relaxed on the bike, which means that if you have to go for a shorter stem, because it shouldn't happen that you're having to really reach out. That will happen if you've made a wrong choice as far as the overall size of the bike is concerned. You want to, hopefully you've got that right. But even with that, if you feel that you're sort of having to reach out, then maybe you want to consider having a shorter stem. This part is called the stem. You can get a wide variety of stems at any local bike shop. So you might want to consider or explore that particular option. So make sure that you're relaxed on the bike, you're not extending, your saddle height is set up. I think that if you take care of that, then I think by and large you're sort of set up. Now we'll move on to the second part of the session, where I'll talk a little bit about bike maintenance. And I think the first part that I would like to cover here, or the first thing that I want to talk about here, is the tire pressure. Maintaining the right tire pressure. Usually your tire wall itself would have some recommendation in terms of how much pressure that you need to maintain. Now this is a mountain terrain bike, like we saw in the first half of the session. They're fat tires. They would typically have lower pressure, somewhere between 30 to 50 psi. A road bike, on the other hand, have very thin tires, and they would typically have higher pressure, somewhere between 90 to 120 psi. Again, these recommendations are there on the tire wall itself. But it's important to ensure that you have the right pressure when before you set out on a ride. I have a foot pump here. This is a foot pump, and as you can see, it has a gauge here that allows me to see how much tire pressure I am going to be filling in the tires. You also don't want to. You want to maintain the right tire pressure. You don't want to overinflate or underinflate. When you overinflate, your ride is going to be bouncy, and also you run the risk of getting a flat if you hit a pebble or something of that sort. And also you don't want to underinflate, because that would make the ride that much more harder, and you are also risking a pinch flat. What's a pinch flat? A pinch flat is when the tube gets squeezed between the tire wall and the rim. That's when you can get a pinch flat. So bottom line and the moral of the story is just make sure that you are pumping the right tire pressure before setting out on the ride. There are certain very broad guidelines how much pressure that you need to maintain for an MTB, for a road bike, or for a hybrid. Just to summarize, if it's a mountain bike, typically you would have it between the range of 30 to 50 psi. And for a road bike, it's on the higher side. Higher tire pressure means they roll with less resistance, they roll easy and faster. Somewhere between 90 to 120 psi is what you would have. And of course, a hybrid sits somewhere in between. Typically, they would have 50 to 70 psi. That's the tire pressure sort of values when it comes to these bikes. The next, as part of bike maintenance, is maintaining your drivetrain. Like we saw, the drivetrain is essentially three components: your cassette, your chain, and the chain rings. So the easiest way to maintain your drivetrain, you want to have a clean drivetrain, because again, these are mechanical parts subject to wear and tear, and they would make your rides a lot more fun if you just maintain and keep them clean. So I'm just going to demonstrate very quickly how to clean your drivetrain. The first thing we're going to do is clean the chain here. So I have a piece of rag over here. Uh, you could use a degreaser. A degreaser. This is what a degreaser looks like. I'm just going to spray a little amount over here, and just wrap it around the chain over here, and just move the chain in the back. Like, just hold it firmly so that it doesn't move along with the chain, and just uh, pedal it backwards here, and this should take much of the muck and the grime and things like that from the chain, because as you can see, it's already, this is a lot of grime that was there on the chain, and we've managed to clean it. So you would want to do that. You could use a degreaser. There are very standard stuff that you get on the market. In the market, you can use a degreaser. Degreaser basically breaks down these mucks, and it's easier to then clean it off. Uh, the degreaser also has the effect of leaving the chain dry. So then you would need a lube. So you would then, I don't have a lube to demonstrate, but again, a lube is something that you can get in the market. So once you've cleaned the drivetrain, like once you, so you start by cleaning the chain. The next thing that you do is you can take a brush. Again, you can use a toothbrush also, as simple as that. Again, use a little bit of degreaser, and then you can clean the cassette. Just take the brush and then just clean the cassette, move it over all the different gears and the sprockets. And the same thing for the chainring also. All you just need to do is take the same brush and just rotate the crank. This is the crank. Rotate the crank and just move the brush over the teeth of these cranks. So this will ensure that you have a clean drivetrain. And once you've done this, the degreaser has the effect of sort of leaving the chain dry. So then you need to lube it. So that's the second part. Basically, lubing, you would have, unfortunately, don't have anything to demonstrate. But yeah, once you just move the crank slowly, and each link here has to be lubed. Okay, you don't want to move it very fast, but just move it very slowly, and make sure that the lube is hitting each link in the tube, in the chain. So this is how you would maintain your drivetrain. It's very important to do that. Do some basic sanity checks. Make sure that your brakes are functioning. Okay, there is a right amount of tension. It's neither too tight nor too loose, because if it's too tight, which basically means the tension in the cable that connects the lever here to the brake, if there's just too much tension, which means that it's too tight, and if you press them, then the braking is just too sudden, too abrupt, and there's a chance that you may actually flip over, right? So you want to make sure that it's not too tight. Of course, if it's very loose, then there is no braking efficiency. You don't want that either. So make sure that there is a right amount of tension in the brake wire, so that you are effectively able to brake and brake smoothly. How do you adjust the tension? That's again kind of it requires a little bit of workmanship over here. But you can just take it to the local technician or the local sort of mechanic and get. The point I'm trying to make is that make sure that you have the right amount of tension. It's neither too tight nor too loose. Okay, so take care of that. Make sure that all the bolts are properly secured. The handlebar bolts, because they tend to get loose over a period of time, because the cycle is subject to so much of vibration on our roads. So there is a tendency for the bolts to get loose over a period of time. But yeah, it always helps to add that sanity check to make sure that the bolts, just a simple check, make sure that the bolts are tight. Okay, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Making sure that the brakes are in good condition, the brake tension is fine. Yeah, and that's, I guess, yeah. Once you've taken care of this, then I think you are all set to, go out for a ride and enjoy it actually. All right, now that we've sort of looked at basics of cycling and some points about how to maintain your bike, we'll talk about actually riding the bike and how do you, how do you ride the bike safely in our conditions. So uh, first things first, when you're out riding, always make sure that you're wearing a helmet. Make sure when you wear it, it's properly secured. It's not just enough to wear a helmet. You need to make sure that it's secured. It should again neither be too tight. Adjust the belt length and all in a way that it's neither too tight nor too loose. If it's too loose, then it kind of doesn't serve the purpose. It can keep moving. That's never a good idea. And if it's too tight, then it's just way too uncomfortable. So just make sure that the length is correct and it's a good quality helmet. Having a good helmet is paramount from a safety standpoint. Speaking from my own experience, I can tell you that the helmet has saved my head at least on 3 different occasions. So I have a strict no helmet, no ride policy. So make sure that you're always wearing a helmet. If you're riding in the dark, obviously you need lights. So I just have a few sample lights you get. This is a USB based light. So you can just, if I take this out, you can see you have a point here. You just need to plug it in to a USB charger and leave it overnight. And there are certain indicators which will let you know if it's fully charged. So make sure if you plan to ride early in the morning and you're planning to start in the dark, then certainly you need quality lights. Make sure that they are charged overnight. Don't do the mistake of setting out on a ride in the dark and you haven't charged it, and unfortunately, a few minutes down the road, you realize that you've run out of charge and now you have to ride in the dark, which is never a good thing. So make sure that you have proper lights and you've charged them and you have it, properly set up. So this one has a flexible kind of a belt, depending upon the size of the handlebar. You can, like this one here is, I can just quickly show. Like, it's got multiple slots, so it can, you can just put it here and there you go. So this one isn't charged, so I wasn't planning to turn it on. But yeah, this is how you would secure. This is a rear light. You would put this on a seat post. This here is called the seat post. And yeah, this goes in the back. And yeah, you can see it starts. So, and again, most of these lights have different modes. You can, this is a blinking mode and so on. There are different modes. You can just choose any one of them. But make sure that you have lights. When you're riding in the dark, you need to have this so that others can see that you're riding, right? So that's the whole point. So, but it's important to make sure that they're properly charged and they will last for the ride. So those are a few things that you need to sort of make sure that in terms of equipment and apparel that you need to take care of from a safety standpoint. So again, when you're out on the ride, a few things that you need to keep in mind. You would want to carry a hand pump like this. You would also need an Allen key set in case you have a mechanical. Basically, this is a bunch. These are Allen keys of different sizes. It's essentially used to tighten or loosen the bolt. So these are items that I would typically carry. You get saddle bags, which you can then hook onto the back of the saddle, and you can put your Allen key. You can put your tube in it. All right. Now that we've talked about the equipment and stuff that we need on the bike. Let's talk about how do you actually ride in a way that will keep you safe, right? So the first things first, always ensure that you have at least one hand on the handlebar. There will be instances where you may want to reach out to grab something from your back pocket or trying to reach down to have a sip of water. But make sure that at least one hand is there on the handlebar while you're doing that, okay? That's number one. Second, be super alert and also learn to anticipate. So for example, let's say you're riding and you see a car parked ahead of you. You would want to cross it in a way where you leave enough margin and buffer so that even if one of the door opens, you are safe. All right, so that's some of the things that you would do when you're riding solo, is just having that sense of alertness. But again, when you're riding in a group, you need to carry that same sense of alertness into a group ride. But here you need to be a little more alert. You also, because you not only need to take care of your own safety, but also the safety of your fellow riders. Hand signals are very important. Again, If you need to slow down, if there's a traffic situation ahead, then you just want to raise your hand like this. So that's a clear signal to the people in the back that there is some obstruction, some traffic build up, and they need to slow down. So coordination, even if you can even call out, you can even shout it out. There is absolutely nothing wrong in shouting out if you see an obstruction, and use that in a way that they're not alarmed, but in a way that they know that there is a problem, and they are also alert, and they can sort of take the corrective action and avoid any unfortunate incident or mishap. So yeah, those are some of the basics when it comes to riding communication, and just being responsible, not just for your own safety, but the safety of your fellow riders. So it's very important. This is a general group ride. You could also do a pace line where you're sort of, it's like a fast ride where riders are riding behind each other to get the benefit of a draft. I won't get into too much into what a draft and all means, but if you're doing that, then make sure that you're not fixated. If you're riding directly behind a rider to get the advantage of a draft, make sure that you're not fixated on the driver's wheel. You still need to look ahead. Okay, that's very important. If you get fixated on the wheel in front, then you have lost focus on what's ahead, and if something were to happen, then you would have no time to react to that. So ensure that if you're doing a pace line, then while you're riding behind another rider to get the benefit of the draft, you still have the focus, and your gaze and eyes are looking ahead rather than looking at the wheel in front. That takes a little bit of practice, but it's important to start developing that. Yeah, as we are sort of coming towards the end of the session, another important point or topic I wanted to quickly touch upon is nutrition and hydration. It's important to take care of this. It again depends on how long you're planning to ride, but general thumb rule is to ensure that you're fueling your ride correctly. So if you're, let's say, planning to go out on a long ride, make sure that you have proper breakfast, carb-rich kind of breakfast. Typically, I would use oatmeal, and that's a very good source of carbs. So make sure that you have a good, healthy breakfast, and there's sufficient time between your breakfast and the time you set out on the ride. Now, on the ride, there are various things that you can do to take care of your nutrition. But it's important to, let's say you're doing a longish kind of a ride, it's important to keep eating at regular intervals. Do not wait till you get hungry, okay? Because then by that time it's already late. Your body is short of reserves. So you need to ensure that you don't wait till you get hungry, or you don't wait till you get thirsty. Ensure that you are regularly sipping some water, or and having some sort of solid food to make sure that your energy reserves stay topped up. So yeah, hydration and nutrition are super important. Keep sipping, keep eating at regular intervals. That's the lesson I want you guys to take from this session. All right, I think we've sort of come to the end of the session. Again, to summarize, we looked at basics. How do you set up the bike? Setting up the correct saddle height. We saw a little bit about gears, selecting the right gears. Then the second part, we looked at a little bit about bike maintenance. How do you have a clean drivetrain? Why bike maintenance is important? And towards the end of the session, we looked at certain safety aspects when it comes to riding your bike. How do you ensure that your rides are safe, particularly when you're riding in a group? So those are some of the things that we covered today. I hope it was of some benefit to you, something that you picked up and learned from this. I enjoyed bringing this session to you based on my experience riding here in India. And yeah, keep riding. Bicycling is fun. It gives you a sense of freedom. And yeah, see beyond, rise above, persistent rocks.